There is a great misunderstanding in today's world that men are emotionally numb, that they don't feel deeply or love truly. But let me reveal a truth spoken in silence, lived in discipline, and taught by the wise like Shi Heng Yi. Men do get emotionally attached, but not in moments of chaos, not in flings of attraction, not in surface-level drama. They get attached when their soul is touched, not by beauty alone, but by energy, by action, by silence, by the presence of someone who understands the depth behind their discipline. You see, a man who walks the path of self-mastery does not open his heart easily. He doesn't just fall in love, he surrenders only when something within him is moved. And what moves him? It is not loud voices or loud beauty. It is stillness, honesty, fierce loyalty, and spiritual depth. So if you're wondering, when does a man truly become emotionally attached? Let Shi Heng Yi's wisdom guide you through these 7 truths, these unshakable, spiritual triggers that awaken his attachment not just to a person, but to a presence that feels like home. Respect is the foundation of emotional connection for a man who has walked through fire to become who he is. Not just respect in the superficial sense, but respect for his time, his effort, his silence, and most importantly, his path. A man may be physically present in a relationship, but his heart stays guarded if he senses that his autonomy is being stripped, or if he's constantly being tested, corrected, or subtly told he's not enough. You see, for many men, especially those who live by inner discipline, who have chosen self-mastery over chaos, emotional attachment does not happen through affection alone. It happens when he knows he's being seen as a man, not as a project to fix or a mind to control. Shi Heng Yi speaks of the balance between discipline and flow, between the structure of the self and the energy around it. When a man feels respected, it's like energy aligns, he can breathe, be himself, without fear of being manipulated or belittled. That feeling of being fully accepted, without being boxed or bound, allows him to trust, and when trust is built on respect, emotional attachment flows naturally. What does that look like in reality? It means honoring his space without guilt, tripping him. It means asking, not demanding. It means giving input, not imposing will. It means understanding that leadership doesn't mean control. It means trusting his judgment the same way he trusts yours. A man will walk through storms if he knows the person beside him believes in him, not tries to change him. Most people confuse love with control, but love that blossoms in control soon turns to resentment. A respected man stays, not because he must, but because he chooses to. He attaches deeply, fiercely, and loyally when he knows he's respected for who he is, not pressured to become someone he is not. Control suffocates. Respect liberates, and only in that liberation does emotional attachment truly grow. Men are not emotionless, they are cautious with their emotions, especially the kind of men who have fought through their darkness, disciplined their desires, and built a life through quiet resilience. These men do not open their hearts at the surface level. They observe, they test the environment, and they only go deep when the space around them is safe. Emotional safety is the invisible armor that allows a man to take off his own. It means knowing that he can speak his truth without it being weaponized. It means knowing that his silence won't be punished, and that his emotional expressions, even when clumsy or rare, won't be laughed at, twisted, or used against him later in arguments. Shi Heng Yi often speaks about inner calm, about how storms outside don't matter if the inside is still. But for a man to emotionally attach, the external energy, the one closest to him, must be calm too. He cannot feel safe in a relationship where he's constantly being tested, manipulated with passive aggressiveness, or pulled into emotional roller coasters that drain his clarity. Many women don't realize that drama doesn't attract strong men, it repels them. A man may stay physically for a while, but emotionally, he checks out the moment he senses instability masked as passion. Emotional games like withholding affection to provoke a reaction, bringing up old wounds to gain the upper hand, or saying one thing while meaning another are silent assassins to emotional connection. A man who values peace will start distancing himself the moment these games begin. What emotional safety looks like, it's being real without fear. It's communication that doesn't punish but builds. It's being allowed to feel tired without being accused of not caring. It's knowing that his emotional honesty won't be turned into weakness. It's a woman who holds space without trying to control what fills it. Emotional safety is not about perfection. It's about predictability in intention. When a man knows that what you say is what you mean, and that you won't emotionally detonate when things get hard, he begins to trust. And when he trusts, he begins to feel. And when he feels, he becomes loyal, not just to the person, but to the peace that person brings into his life. That's when emotional attachment takes root not through tension, but through emotional sanctuary. For the modern man walking the path of self-mastery, the world is often loud, chaotic, and constantly demanding. Everywhere he turns, someone wants his attention, his energy, his time. But what he longs for beneath the armor and behind the calm exterior is stillness, not just the absence of noise, but the presence of peace. And when he finds that stillness in another person's presence, without them needing to speak a word, that's when something shifts inside him. Shi Heng Yi teaches that true energy is not in how much you do or say, but in how deeply you can simply be. A man gets emotionally attached not through clever conversation or surface-level stimulation, but when he feels seen without being scrutinized and understood without being interrogated. Stillness becomes sacred when it replaces pressure. So many people chase men with endless words, trying to prove love with volume, but the wise woman knows words are fleeting. What speaks louder is the quality of her energy, the calm she brings into the room, the way her silence feels safe, not suffocating. Presence isn't about being physically near. It's about being spiritually aligned, emotionally centered, and energetically balanced. A woman who can sit with a man in silence without fidgeting, complaining, or needing to fill every pause communicates something profound. I'm not here to entertain you. I'm here to walk beside you in peace. To a man who has spent his life shielding his soul from the noise of the world, this kind of presence is a rare and priceless gift. It tells him that he can rest, that he doesn't have to perform, that he doesn't need to fight for attention or defend his solitude. And when that stillness is consistent, when he can come to her not to be fixed, but simply to exist, it becomes magnetic, not in a flashy way, but in a grounding way. The kind of attachment it forms is deep, quiet, and unshakable. Not born from adrenaline, but from the comfort of shared stillness, a sacred space where two souls breathe without effort, speak without noise, and connect without force. A man who finds that kind of stillness in someone's presence doesn't just stay. He sinks into it like a warrior finally laying down his sword. Every man walking the path of purpose is driven by an internal fire, a mission that defines his identity, his choices, and his discipline. This mission may not always be clear to others. It might not even be glamorous or easy to understand, but to him it is sacred. It's the compass that guides him through chaos. It's the reason he wakes up early, trains in silence, sacrifices comfort, and stays grounded when the world tempts him with distractions. Shi Heng Yi often speaks of balance, the harmony between internal stillness and external movement. And for a man to reach that state, his mission must be protected. It must not be ridiculed, minimized, or treated as less important than temporary feelings. When a woman recognizes this, when she truly sees that his purpose is not a rival to her, but a reflection of who he really is, her value in his life becomes immeasurable. You see, a man gets emotionally attached to a woman who does not compete with his focus, but one who aligns with it. He doesn't want someone to constantly ask, "Why do you work so much?" or "Why are you always busy?" Instead, he seeks the one who says, "I see the fire in your eyes and I stand with you as you chase what makes you whole." This doesn't mean becoming invisible or always taking a back seat. It means coexisting with his vision, not colliding with it. Many relationships crumble because the woman unknowingly becomes a distraction rather than a partner. She demands time at the cost of his growth. She creates emotional drama when he's trying to focus. She pulls him away from his craft, his training, or his calling, not because she doesn't love him, but because she doesn't understand that for a man, his mission is not separate from his love. It is part of his love. When a man sees that a woman not only tolerates his mission, but celebrates it when she asks about his progress, supports his grind, and doesn't trip him for every moment spent building, his heart opens in a way that's rare. She becomes part of the story he's writing. He no longer sees her as a source of tension, but as a source of amplification, someone who adds power to his purpose rather than draining it. And that is where deep emotional attachment begins, not in comfort, but in commission. A shared space where she becomes the calm in his storm and the fuel in his engine, not by controlling his pace, but by honoring the path he's chosen. In that sacred alignment between love and purpose, the emotional bond becomes unbreakable. Because to a man of vision, love that empowers his mission is the highest form of connection. Vulnerability is not easy for men, especially for men who have been taught to wear strength like armor and carry silence like a shield. In many cultures, in many upbringings, men are conditioned to suppress their emotions, to never cry, to never show weakness. The message is clear: you must endure, you must be the rock, you must never break. But that doesn't mean men don't feel deeply. In fact, many men feel more than they show, and they feel it alone. So when a man finally chooses to open up, even just a little, when he cracks the shell and shares something that he's buried beneath years of silence, it is not a small moment. It's a sacred offering, a risk, a test of trust. It means he's saying, "Here's a piece of me I don't show the world. I want to see what you do with it." Shi Heng Yi reminds us that true strength lies not in force, but in openness. And for a man, vulnerability is not weakness, it is the ultimate act of strength. To drop his guard, to speak the truth of his pain, his past, his doubts, takes more courage than most will ever understand. But here's the catch: once that moment happens, how it's received determines everything. If she judges him, mocks him, dismisses him, or uses his vulnerability later in an argument, she doesn't just hurt his feelings, she shuts the door to his emotional world. Possibly forever, because for him, that moment of exposure was never just about talking. It was about testing emotional safety, and if that safety fails, he won't risk it again. But if she listens, not with pity, not with condescension, but with presence and patience, if she creates a space where he feels heard without being fixed, where she doesn't interrupt, doesn't rush to solve, but simply sits with him in that emotional space, he attaches in a way that few will ever see. Because suddenly, he's not alone anymore. She becomes the one person in his life where he doesn't have to be the warrior, where he can lay down his sword, even if just for a moment, and breathe without pretending. What he truly seeks is not someone to rescue him. He's never asked for that. What he seeks is someone who understands him, not just on the surface, but at the core. Someone who hears what he says and what he doesn't, who knows that his silence sometimes screams louder than his words, and when she shows that understanding, when she honors his vulnerability without trying to shape it, solve it, or shrink it, something profound happens. A bond forms that isn't based on performance, looks, or obligation. It's based on something soul, deep, the experience of being fully known and fully accepted in a world that often demands men be everything except human. To the untrained eye, men may seem to value excitement, unpredictability, or adrenaline, but that couldn't be further from the truth for a man who has built his life on purpose, self, discipline, and personal accountability. For that kind of man, consistency isn't boring, it's sacred. It's how he measures trust. It's how he defines peace. And most importantly, it's how he decides who to attach himself to emotionally. In a world that is full of emotional chaos, hot one day, cold the next, affectionate one week, distant the next, present during good times, absent during hardship, men learn to guard their hearts. They stop investing in things that can't hold steady. Why? Because they've worked too hard creating internal order to allow someone else's external inconsistency to unravel their peace. Shi Heng Yi often speaks of inner stillness, the idea that peace isn't found outside, but cultivated through repetition, routine, and mindful living. A man aligned with this wisdom does not respond to chaos with affection. He steps back, he analyzes, he watches patterns, and he notices when someone's presence comes with too many emotional highs and lows, too many dramatic shifts, and too much unpredictability disguised as passion. You see, to such a man, consistency is emotional truth. Anyone can be kind once, anyone can make promises, but the people who consistently show up in tone, in energy, in presence are the ones who gain his respect and eventually his heart. So, what does consistency look like to a man? It's not perfection. It's not being overly available or robotic. It's about emotional reliability. It's about knowing that if he shares something vulnerable, your reaction won't be wildly different next week. It's about trusting that if you're loving today, you won't be cruel tomorrow. It's about patterns, not moments. Because inconsistency to a man is not just confusing, it's threatening. It signals instability. And for someone who lives by structure and peace, instability becomes exhausting. When a woman constantly shifts her emotional energy, warm and open one moment, closed and reactive the next, the man's nervous system begins to tighten. His body may stay, but his spirit withdraws, because he knows if he must constantly brace for emotional impact, he cannot relax, and if he cannot relax, he cannot attach. But when a woman brings steady energy, when her words, her tone, her affection, her presence remain grounded, he doesn't just notice. He begins to trust, and that trust isn't built in one grand romantic moment. It's built in repeated presence. It's built when she shows up the same way on his worst days as she does on his best. To a man of discipline, consistency is not about being overly emotional or always available. It's about being anchored, not pulled by every wave, not shifted by every mood, but calm, steady, predictable in her emotional intent. And it is within that consistency that the seeds of emotional attachment quietly take root. Not loudly, not quickly, but deeply and permanently. For a man who lives with discipline and purpose, emotional expression is not the only language he speaks. In fact, many many men on the path of self-mastery like those following the teachings of Shi Heng Yi operate not just through emotion, but through energy. Energy is quiet. Energy is felt before words are spoken. And a man, particularly one who has trained his mind and body to be centered, stable, and self-reliant, does not connect deeply with just emotional intensity, he connects with energetic alignment. Most people confuse emotionality with depth. They think if someone cries easily, feels passionately, or loves loudly, it means they are spiritually compatible. But men who have done inner work see beyond emotional flashes. They're drawn to energy that mirrors their lifestyle, not just their moods. So what does it mean to match his energy? It means living with intention. It means moving with self-awareness, not impulse. It means carrying yourself with a sense of purpose, not just floating through life hoping to be rescued by love. A man on a mission is not interested in someone who drains his energy or constantly pulls him out of alignment. He is magnetically drawn to a woman who can stand beside him without needing to be carried, who walks her own path of growth, healing, and self-control, because in that reflection, he sees someone he can build with, not just feel with. Matching energy is not about mimicking behavior. It's about resonating with the same values: discipline over chaos, stillness over drama, progress over stagnation, mindfulness over reactivity. It's about both individuals moving in the same direction, even if they're not holding hands every second. It's about recognizing in each other a similar vibration, a frequency of focus, peace, and inner strength. Men get emotionally attached not when a woman floods them with feelings, but when her energy feels like home to his nervous system. When being around her doesn't cause adrenaline spikes, confusion, or tension, but instead brings grounding, clarity, and quiet support. And it goes further. If he sees that she holds herself to standards, that she values health, discipline, honesty, growth, then he respects her energy. He sees her not as someone who simply reacts to life, but someone who creates life intentionally. That kind of energy is rare. That kind of woman is rare, because too often people try to connect through emotional neediness instead of energetic harmony. But true men-centered men don't chase drama. They don't attach to noise. They align with women who move like them, not necessarily in style or interests, but in spirit. She doesn't have to be perfect, but she must be anchored, present, awake. And when her energy matches his, not just emotionally, but vibrationally, the attachment that forms is not a temporary infatuation. It becomes a resonance, a rhythm, the kind of rhythm that doesn't need constant words to be understood. Only presence, only shared stillness, only silent movement forward. Physical beauty may attract a man's attention, but it never holds his soul. Not the kind of man who walks a disciplined path, not the kind of man who is shaped by silence, sharpened by purpose, and centered in wisdom. For such a man, beauty without depth is like a flame without warmth, bright but fleeting, visible yet empty. It catches the eye but never the heart. Shi Heng Yi teaches that true understanding comes not from the surface, but from awareness, a consciousness that sees beyond form. And that is exactly how a high consciousness man views attraction, not through lust, but through energetic substance. He may notice the curve of a smile, the shine in the eyes, the elegance of a figure. But if that beauty is not matched by spiritual insight, by emotional maturity, by conscious awareness of self and others, it begins to fade in his perception. Because a man who has worked on himself, who has faced his fears, conquered his urges, and fought through the illusions of the world is no longer captivated by appearances. He is captivated by essence. He wants to know, can she sit in silence without needing to fill it? Does she ask questions that reveal curiosity, not control? Is she grounded in her values or swayed by trends and opinions? Does her beauty reflect the way she treats people, not just the way she presents herself? To him, spiritual depth is magnetic. It reveals itself in the way she speaks, the way she listens, the way she responds to pain and handles joy. A woman with depth doesn't need to show off. Her presence is her statement. Her integrity is her glow. And here's something few understand. When a man sees that a woman is not only physically radiant, but also spiritually rooted, something powerful happens inside him. He no longer sees her as a desire, he sees her as a portal. A doorway into a relationship that transcends time, ego, and surface needs. She becomes someone he wants to grow with, not just flirt with. Someone who challenges his mind, sharpens his focus, and nourishes his soul. Not because she's trying to impress him, but because she's aligned with something higher than both of them. And this depth is not loud, it's not showy, it's not marketed on social media. It shows up in subtle ways, in the way she talks to people who can't benefit her, in how she reacts when things don't go her way, in her ability to self-reflect, to apologize without ego, to hold herself accountable, in the peace that follows her into a room. Physical beauty might be admired by the world, but spiritual depth is recognized by the soul. And when a man who has done the inner work recognizes that depth in someone else, he doesn't just see her as a woman, he sees her as a mirror of his own growth. In that moment, attachment is not a choice, it's a natural outcome. Because he knows this is not just someone to look at, this is someone to walk with. So now you understand men do get emotionally attached, but not because of what you wear, what you say, or how often you text. They get attached to energy, to peace, to depth, to the calm in the storm, not the chaos in disguise. They attach when they feel respected, not controlled, when emotional safety replaces emotional games, when silence feels sacred, and when a partner doesn't pull him off his path, but walks beside him in purpose, when vulnerability is protected, not punished, when consistency becomes more attractive than chemistry, when energy aligns, and when beauty is backed by soul. That's the truth, not the viral kind, not the trendy kind, but the real kind, the kind of truth that lasts. If this speech opened your eyes, made you think, or helped you understand men on a deeper level, I want to thank you for watching with your heart, not just your ears. And if you want more powerful insights like this, more wisdom that can change how you love, how you think, and how you grow, please subscribe to my channel. Your support means the world to me. We're building a space here for truth, for wisdom, for growth, and I'd love for you to be part of it. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the bell and share this video with someone who needs to hear it. Until next time, stay grounded, stay present, stay real.